Alright, Trekkies going first. I think they both kept 7. Looks like a fetch into some kind of duel. Trekkie is on a Lotus Breach build. Um, Pretty classic, powerful, focused combo deck. Whereas Travs, TR33VS, I'm just going to say Travs, is running a 5-color Hoof build, which is sort of a creature ramp into big finish with Crater Hoof, or, it can kind of do a mid-range beatdown plan. But it is splashing something spicy out of basically every color. In red, it has Minsk and Boo, Ren and 6. In black, it's getting Grist. Blue has Oko. And white, I think, offers a Night of Autumn. Yeah. So, a little bit of spice. Oh, Neoform for blue as well. So, basically, very, very heavy green with just a light sprinkle of the other colors mixed in. This is going to be a matchup that strongly comes down to how good the Lotus Breach draws are, since that's going to be the main threat. Is Lotus Breach going to be able to close the game out before Hoof can do much? Travs is on some disenchant effects. Most of them are not that helpful. Night of the Autumns enter the battlefield. Doesn't really matter when the artifacts can happily all be played in the same turn. Enchantments only going to sit around for one turn anyway. But Outland Liberator can sit and play and threaten to pop a Underworld Breach. Collector Oof obviously makes it very difficult to combo out for the Lotus Breach deck. Outside of those hate cards, though, there's not... I guess Scavenging Ooze can keep the graveyard clear, and an empty graveyard is a pretty difficult spot to go off with Underworld Breach from. Endurance also serving that same purpose. That's pretty much it, though, for big ways to interact from the Hoof player side. Hexdrinker is a good clock. 2-1 for 1 baseline, put some mana into it, keeps growing. The 6/6 protection from everything level up mode is probably not going to be relevant. I don't think the game's going to go that long, unless it's getting dragged out quite a bit, at which point mana's probably not being spent on Hexdrinker. But ideally here, Travs will be able to jam some critters into play, do a natural order away one of the least important ones, and then get a Crater Hoof out and smash for lethal. Maybe turn 4-ish, something in there. Trekkie is doing a Duress. The Hoof deck is pretty heavy on creatures, less so on non-creature spells, but there are targets. Grist, not one of them, although it says it is just a planeswalker. It has an ability that makes it count as a creature when it's not in the battlefield, so the only legal target in that hand is going to be Summoner's Pact. This is probably not the best matchup for Grist. Grist sort of thrives in a grindy setup or people banking on particular creatures, neither of which Trekkie has a interest in. So more likely we're going to see a Questing Beast come down and slam in for a good chunk of damage alongside the Hexdrinker. There's also Kolga. It has a sort of disenchant effect on attacks, but that's a 6-mana creature that also needs to attack, so it just seems very unlikely that it's going to come up in this match. Worldly Tutor, or sorry, that's Worldly Council, which is essentially a impulse, but you look at domain X cards. So I think 3 for Trekkie here, potentially up to 5. But frequently it will be slightly worse than Impulse, similar to Impulse, and occasionally better than Impulse. I imagine the Uro is happening. It's putting out a Wasteland. That's nice. Slowing down the Lotus Breach deck. Mana is a... It's hard to say how relevant any particular land is. Sometimes it can matter quite a bit. Sometimes that deck would rather have the land in the graveyard to serve as fuel for a breach. So I think it's still a safe bet to go for the Wasteland, though I might have gone for the Questing Beast here instead, just to really accelerate the clock. Trekkie does have some 3-mana cards, some 3-mana tutors, so trying to cut those off is certainly reasonable. Desperate Ritual into Grim Monolith, Lightning Bolt, your Hex Drinker is quite a line. Trekkie is now set up with potentially 5 mana next turn, maybe more. But it's not really a deck that needs the colorless that badly unless it's going for one of the less breach-dependent lines. If it's going for a Dark Petition kind of plan or Behold the Beyond, that boost in mana. Peer into the Abyss, though, would be the main card that you're going to want to slam with a bunch of colorless mana. It's very possible for the deck to go off without Breach, without a Lotus, by just drawing 40 cards or so and storming out from there. Questing Beast is putting the pressure on. It's not a short clock, but it is going to close it out within a few turns at least. Wild Canter, another one that can boost mana in a following turn, but the sad truth is it's just not going to be blocking that Questing Beast. That Questing Beast does not permit small creatures to block it, and Wild Canter is too short to make that block. I imagine Trekkie would prefer to be digging right now, but having a Lotus is not a bad spot to be. Okay, we're tracking floating mana, it looks like. Spending a lot of it into Peer into the Abyss. So that's going to be lose half your life, draw half your deck, round up each time. Relatively straightforward. From there, you've probably got enough fast mana that you can chain some ritual effects, and then maybe Tendrils of Agony the opponent out. I think we're at Storm 1, 2, 3 with the Peer for Cantor, Lotus, Peer itself. 6 more spells, and then a Tendrils would be lethal. And with 40 cards in hand, that becomes fairly easy. Cantor can also cash out for a mana this turn as well. So It can serve as a mana filter. Oh, we've got an endurance happening. I am not sold on endurance there. Like, yeah, you can kind of prevent certain lines with it, but you're also giving the opponent more cards because their deck is now bigger, so there's a larger half to take. So I'm not sure about evoking endurance in response to Pier. I guess once you've got enough cards in hand, the effect is almost irrelevant, so trying to do it while it matters is the thought process. But I would still be inclined to at least try to limit how much mana or how many cards the opponent gets access to. So we'll see if Truckee can make it happen with 40 in hand or so. Lion's Eye Diamond. Could just pitch the hand right now. It's a lot of cards in graveyard. Probably won't, though. Really wants Chrome Mox, Lotus Petal. Mox Diamond. There's the Lotus Petal. Now we're probably going to see Dark Ritual. Storm 5, or Storm 6. Crop rotation, I think. Yeah, that went by pretty quick, so I imagine it's a crop rotation. Actually, I don't think... Oh, it's a fetch land, obviously. Alright. Cracking a fetch land. Still 3 black floating. Probably got a few more rituals. Cashes Wild Canter in. Spending that mana in 1 black on something. It's going to be Squandered Resources, which will let the rest of the lands be sacked for bonus mana. It's sort of a ritual for 1. Looks like an Entomb. I'm guessing there's a Breach in hand, and Truckee just wants to go for it directly instead of trying to do the full-on Storm Out. Or maybe the hand just wasn't really up for that task. There's a lot of black. So Lethal Tendrils is now possible. Hardcast Gitaxian Probe instead of paying life. It's possible the Entomb was not to set up Breach, just to build Storm, but I would imagine there are other cards that could be played that might be more relevant for the same cost, if that was the idea. 5 black floating, 2 more mana potentially usable from the Squandered Resources. Tendrils is enough. Dark Petition. Okay, so this will leave 3 black floating once the spell resolves. That with Squandered would be Tendrils, but could be... Oh, okay. We're going to go for Lion's Eye Diamond response, pitch the big old hand. That's too much mana. You're going to 3 mana, not... Oh, no. I guess, yeah, 3 black from lead and then 3 from the petition, I suppose. And just grab that tendrils. Easy peasy. Nice and simple, and that'll be game 1. Alright, both players are keeping their 7. Travs leads off with a Ignoble Hierarch. Off of a Yavimaya Cradle of Growth. I have to assume that's a pathway. Into Monk's Diamond, pitching a Gemstone Mine. Pinthead Prism, storing 2 counters on it. So a potential 5 mana next turn. Travs plays Wasteland, takes out the pathway. I think that's a pathway. And gets Hoof down. Alright, this is kind of the ideal start. This is what Travs wants to see. Hoof is probably one of the best cards. Trekkie has very limited amounts of ways to remove it. Lightning Bolt being one of the few, and currently doesn't have functioning mana to even cast it because all the mana sources are artifacts, which can't be activated thanks to Hoof. So this will serve as a quick clock. Trav's gonna fetch. Most likely just wants to keep putting on the pressure, close this game out as fast as possible to reduce the chance that Trekkie can answer the lockout of Collector Hoof. Now, it is technically possible for the Storm deck to combo out through an Hoof. It is significantly more difficult since you're relying completely on the ritual spells and having to do a very precarious balance of generating mana and getting enough cards to go off entirely. Okay, got a land, fetched land. Question is, does Trekkie have a removal spell to get rid of that Hoof? If not, it is looking pretty bleak. Notably, the tutors can be used to pick up some removal. A Dress Down could be acquired via Enlightened Tutor, but given that Trekkie still only has 1 viable mana source, and that is whatever is being fetched right now, chaining a tutor into another spell does not look great. You'd have to be pretty lucky to do it at this moment, and Volcanic Island is not the land that lets you cast a lot of the tutors. So my guess is either Trekkie already has the bolt or is just going to go digging with blue spells. Pre-ordering here, 1 top, 1 bottom. Taking the top card, probably another land, but could be the bolt. Is it Charm is another way to theoretically get Hoof out of there. After that, the options for removing it dwindle away for the Lotus Breach deck. Okay, that is just a scoop. So, we'll go on to game 3. Trekkie has kept 7. Travs has gone down to 6. I imagine Trekkie's going first, and we'll see how that opening looks. The Lotus Breach deck is a combo deck that is set up in such a way that it can go off through disruption. It has the trio of Hind, Disruption, Duress, Thoughtseize, Inquisition. It also has some sort of stack interaction with Silence, Abeyance, and Orm's Chant. Although those are a little less relevant against the creature decks rather than the counterspell decks. But Lotus Breach is a deck that wants to combo out and has the plan of forcing it through eventually. So, Cradle Hoof. The Hoof plan has to be some amount of reasonable clock and disrupting Breach at the same time. If Travs has another Oof or a tutor that can grab Oof, that could potentially be enough, but it looks like Trekkie is exploding a little bit right now. We've got a Moonblessed Cleric. This is a creature that gets to search the library, or lets you search your library for an enchantment, put it on top. You can grab the Breach for the deck's victory plan. It can also grab some tech cards too. I believe that Trekkie is on City of Solitude, Dress Down, Squandered Resources. So, if you were starved on mana, or just really wanted to be able to stop a Thassa's Oracle, or wanted to have a way harder to interrupt defense grid, those are all options. City of Solitude does not permit someone to even channel a land outside of their turn because that is an activated ability. So that is the hard shutdown for anyone stopping you from doing your combo on your turn, assuming it gets to stay in play. The 3/2 body, not that relevant for Trekkie, but it can block, maybe trade. And now the Underworld Breach looms on top of his deck. Travs really needs some way to limit it. Whether that be something to shut down the graveyard, maybe getting rid of some of the mana that Trekkie has access to. It's not a great feeling, though, when the Breach deck is about to drop Breach. That's not where you want to be. Notably, Trekkie doesn't have a lot of cards in graveyard yet, and you do need, usually, a few to get the escapes going. Though, if you've drawn Brain Freeze, that's sort of self-fulfilling. It fills the yard very quickly. Travs makes some more Mandorks. No other action at the moment. Well, hopefully for Travs, Trekkie does not have the means to go for it this turn, and gets another window to make life tougher. That Moonblessed Cleric is coming in. I suppose there's not much reason not to. It does reduce the amount of storm required for Tendrils of Agony to be lethal. Alright, let's see what Travs has. Up to 4 mana. That opens up some options. Swinging for 3 with the Paradise Druid is probably not going to be good enough. Court of Calling. With one more land, Court of Calling could grab Oof in the middle of a combo turn. I assume those are tapping for mana? Yeah, definitely. So 5 mana. We have... oh, okay, yes, the castle. Activating the castle to turn it into 6 mana. Woodland Bellower can go grab any non-legendary 3 casting cost or less green creature. I would have to assume it's going to be Hoof. Yep. So Mox Diamond is off. The question is, does Trekkie have an answer, or let's say a dress down to try and go off through it? Toxic Deluge. That is an answer. 2 life is sufficient to take out Hoof. Looks like it's going to be for 4 life, though. So that the... or 5. Yeah, 5 life, so the Woodland Bellower is also biting the dust. Not a lot of ways to get that Hoof back. The Hoof deck is not running Eternal Witness. It's not on Regrowth, so realistically, the only way it's going to be coming back up out of the yard is the hard way, maybe an Endurance into another tutor. Questing Beast is a nice clock, but Trekkie now has the gates open and is free to go for it with a decently full yard. The Deluge added some decent fuel. So we've got Lotus and Breach. Oh, and a Lion's Eye. Is there any tutor in there? Transmute. Okay. Transmuting a Shred Memory, I assume, into Brain Freeze is probably going to do it, unless Trav is sitting on the Endurance. The Endurance could be good enough, potentially. Depending on how Trekkie goes for this. So we've got Breach. That is the second spell cast this turn. Okay. Endurance in response to Breach. Unfortunately, with Lead and Brain Freeze in hand, that doesn't stop the combo at all. It was going to require a little more effort to do it, because now Trekkie can just freeze for 4, putting 12 cards into the graveyard, and then Lead to make mana, recast freeze, replay Lead, and go until the deck is sufficiently dumped into the graveyard to just win. It is hard to figure out the exact right time to Endurance a Breach deck, especially if they've got multiple setups like getting Lead and Lotus. But yeah, this is a guaranteed go off, unfortunately. Deterministic, as you might say. Best bet might have been to Endurance with just Brain Freeze left on the stack. And, well, I guess then you'd still be able to Lead, Float Blue. Brain Freeze would put 3 into the yard so it could still escape itself. And yeah, I don't know. I think maybe that draw was just sort of a little too resilient to Endurance. Not much you could do. Theoretically, the Breach deck can keep the mana artifacts from ever being vulnerable to Graveyard Hate. If you have sufficient fuel, you can cast Lotus and then sack it, and then immediately escape it before passing priority, because the mana ability doesn't go on the stack, and thus the artifact is never exposed to Graveyard Hate. That plus Brain Freeze, adding the cards for itself to be escaped, can make it very difficult. But Trekkie takes it down, finishing it off with a nice big Tendrils of Agony.